Everyone, all of you that have been here many times, and those of you that are here for the first time. And if you've not been here um, before, there are some chants that many of us are familiar with that we will engage in the beginning and at the end. If you just kind of listen and follow along, you can learn them, and um, someone can also direct you to where you can find them at some point. But let's begin with a few minutes of silent sitting as others continue to arrive. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. It's wonderful to see all of you and to be with you again today. There was a retreat going on the last weekend in Lancaster, the first in-person retreats in 3 years, at the Friends Meeting House there, which is a beautiful, beautiful place where I've been blessed to teach and to practice. And then there was a longer multi-day intensive at Appamada in Austin, many people in person and some online. So it was we're coming off of a lot of Dharma activity in our larger family. As I was sitting in the silence and stillness with you, I was very impressed with how a lot of the activity that happens when we come online was starting to settle. People were beginning to be very still, without too much distraction on screen. It's a hard thing to do when you're on your own, to feel like you're in the room and to bring your stillness and focus. But it was beautiful to see that happening. And I was reminded, as I did, of a little vignette story that most of you have probably heard, but it's attributed to Kodo Sawaki Roshi, who was one of the wonderful teachers of the previous century in which most of us were born and grew up, in which so many people were going to him to learn Zen practice and were approaching him as a teacher. And he said something like, why do you want to sit Zazen? It's completely useless. Doing nothing is useless. And if you don't dedicate your life completely to this thing that is useless, your life will be useless. So it's this strange thing that I want to speak about today, the more difficult thing, I think, in Buddhist teachings about emptiness. When I began this little series, I feel like I've been teaching a long retreat with different Dharma talks in it this month. We started out with, who am I without you? In which we spoke about deep relationality. The mutuality of our being is the foundation of relational practice. And then the next week, what does the world need? Extending that to the deep connectedness of all beings and how central love is to this practice. And then honoring Martin Luther King, who called all these elements into action. And in that larger sense, his following Gandhi saying, for me to be free, all of us have to be free, is the entry into the Bodhisattva vow. And in this past weekend, at Appamada, the intensive was about training in compassion. And in Lancaster, about returning to the essence of our practice. So we're sort of in this arc. And all of these speak to the broad and essential fabric of practice, as well as the boundless kind of benefits We just chanted, vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction, and wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. This broad and essential fabric of relationality, of deep connectedness and love, and of exhibiting these things in the world through practice. So today, I want to talk a little bit about, and just sort of hold on to your seats. I know I'm going to speak about a lot of things, but it's what's moving in my mind and my heart right now. The ways we inevitably move through all these with a kind of a polarity as we attempt to find the middle way. When you sway back and forth on your seat in Zazen with Krishna, you try to find that middle space. So sometimes we practice with an outside-in view, emphasizing spiritual friendship and beloved community. And sometimes we practice with an inside-out view, emphasizing Zazen and other forms of practice that seem more individual in a way. That outside-in, but ask yourself, I've emphasized spiritual friendship and community in the last few talks, but is this really the cause of liberation? Do spiritual friendships produce the freedom, or is it the condition for awakening? It is the ground of freedom and the container within which it opens. And warm, clear care provides not only just this ground of awakening, but also the nourishment for us to continue. This is what I've been emphasizing. But it's not a substitute for the practice only you can do. This one that seems useless, this seemingly doing nothing. If you were a musician and you had a wonderful teacher who would teach you your instrument, and you had an instrument that was wonderful and you enjoyed your relationship with it, and you had friends that encouraged you and family that thought you were just wonderful, no matter how you played, and you had an audience that you could perform for. None of that is playing. It's the conditions around which playing can happen. It's not the essential practice of actually demonstrating music. And also in this outside-in view, another little side road we can get trapped in is that freedom isn't just feeling good or receiving the consoling messages that we crave, like in the example of the music. Everything's going to be okay. We need that, but that's not the transformative term. So sometimes in the outside-in practices, which we need, we can get sidetracked. Inside out, our individual practices like Zazen can't be really done alone, although we have to do them on our own with others. It's a little edge there. And always trying harder, just sitting more, can confuse compulsion with devotion. I think that's a really common one. We can feel compelled, or the way I would say it in my old religious language, we confuse guilt with devotion. Sitting is essential. It's the non-negotiable of our Zen way, and it's not enough. And so we have to balance wholesome effort and spacious rest to realize our inherent liberation and freedom, which is always with us. So I just wanted to speak about the way that, since I was emphasizing relationality, this outside in is really crucial, but the inside out is also crucial. And there are side roads that we can get lost on a little bit, trying to find the middle way. Here is a story I just heard recently, which I really liked, and using the music metaphor once again. In this case, a music student was invited and accepted to attend a master class with one of this student's heroes, musical hero. And I was telling the story the other day, and I actually don't know who it was, but I was imagining, like, if I was a cellist, if Yo-Yo Ma said, I'll give you a private lesson, something like that. It's really amazing. And you can choose your own musician, whoever that might be. And so the student arrived, and met the master that he was going to, or she was going to be with, and the senior teacher welcomed this young student with great kindness, and was very inviting and encouraging and really warm. And they set up their instruments and began to tune up and warm up and get things ready as one would do for instruction. And the senior teacher said, let's play these scales to get ourselves moving, And so they began to do that, and they continued to do that, and they continued to do that through the entire time. And the students started getting irritated. Like, we're just going to play scales? And the teacher was very happy and very generous and kind. All they did was play scales. The teacher showed the student what was essential and joyful to do together. The fundamental, continuous practice with the teacher and the student at their side, just sitting or just walking, whatever that essential practice is, just the scales. And there's a powerful teaching in that, of course, because this is the essential and broad fabric of practice, this weaving of alone and together. And what I want to now I want to do a little improv about is how we wake up to what binds us within this fabric of practice, this vast robe of liberation. And you may have heard this saying. Now, many of you probably haven't, because at Appamada we don't use monastic forms quite so much, so we don't usually wear robes. But there's an old saying that someone asked a teacher, what does it mean to be a priest? And they said, mostly it's fabric management. But the joke doesn't work that well for you guys, because you're usually in there seeing the priest, how complicated it is to do all the things that you have to do when you wear robes, other than a rakasu, which is more simple. But I can tell you, the intentional, careful attention to the many layers in the robes and how one has to arrange them in order to do something isn't just management of something difficult or foreign. It actually represents the practice of inside out, outside in, of clumsy human elegance. Always clumsy human elegance. It's the enactment of what's required, whether we wear the robes or not. When I've worn them for years, and I still do now and then, I can feel their constraints and their limitations. It's kind of a pain in some ways, to manage all this stuff. How they bind me, slow me down, prevent me from acting with just sort of ease. And I don't get to just follow my personal preferences because the robes require certain things of me. Because I respect them, I have to take off the rakasu or the okeso when I go into the bathroom, because they're not to be brought into that space. When I have to pack, they have to be on top and in a certain and I place them somewhere to carry. You just can't put them on and on. So I can feel the binding quality, the directing quality, the limitations, and at the very same time, I feel the warm ways they hold me and inspire me. These robes represent the very body of Buddha. We say, wearing the universal teaching, wearing the universal body. This is a powerful alchemy there. The robes that bind me are also the robes that unbind me. And apart from this idea of the robes, it turns out what binds you and what unbinds you are the same things. It's like the old saying goes, when you fall down on the ground, you use the ground to help yourself get up. This is this difficult thing to speak about. You take another little turn, see how it goes for you. The objects we perceive, like here on the screen, you see the little squares, you see the computer, you see what's around you, you hear things. Any object we perceive through our sense organs, we know are like everything else. They're contingent, they're ever-changing, there's no essential nature. So what you see and hear and taste and touch and smell and think, and yes, by the way, cognitions are another door of perception. The way we construct and are constructed by how our minds works, all of these things are impermanent and contingent. The things that we look at, see, deal with, all of these things, whatever in our perception. And the perceptions themselves, in which we meet these impermanent, interdependent objects, are also contingent. They're also emergent qualities that are empty of an essential nature. For example, what is seen and the seeing are both constructions. What's heard and the hearing, what's thought and the thinker, it's the coming together of the sense object and the sense organ that creates what we call reality. Now I know this is not beginning stuff, but it's important to begin to stretch your mind and heart a little bit around. Curiously, the perceiver and what's perceived are both empty of an inherent existence and are conditioned and co-arise like everything else. Perceptions are a great example of dependent co-arising, the meeting of the sense object and the sense organ. They're like vines and strands that twist together and create the tangle of inside and out. And a big, thick book called the Visuddhimagga, it's translated as The Path of Purification. It was written in the 5th century, very, very early Buddhist teachings. There's a little thing that is said right in the beginning. The whole book begins with this. Some of you may have heard it. The inner tangle and the outer tangle, this generation is entangled in a tangle. Tell me, Gautama, the Buddha, who succeeds in untangling the tangle? So that's 2,500 years ago. This generation is entangled in a tangle. If they only knew what it's like now. The inner tangle and the outer tangle. Inner tangle, outer tangle. This generation is entangled in a tangle. So they asked the Buddha, who succeeds in untangling the tangle? Well, I'm going to get back to part of that story, but first we have to have another analogy because this stuff is so crazy. In one of the sutras, the Buddha took a scarf, a kata. You know these things? You see, the Dalai Lama, they'll put it on, It's a very traditional thing that would have been around. And the Buddha was trying to explain this. So he took a scarf that he had, and he tied a knot in it. And he asked the people who were listening to him, what is this? And if I ask you, like, what is this? It's not rocket science. It's like, there's a scarf with a knot. It's really easy. It's very straightforward. Then he tied 5 more knots in the same scarf. And if this were to continue, in fact, if I took these 5 knots and then made a knot of that one, you see what happens. It might even turn into something that didn't even resemble a scarf. It might appear as something more solid and apparently dense and unlike the scarf that we started with. However, he pointed out that unlike, well, he said it this way, even though it's knotted up, fundamentally, the scarf is not damaged or broken within all of this. And if one of the knots is unraveled, then it's revealed as whole. It's completely itself, but it's also completely itself all along, even if it's constricted. And so the Buddha then pulls on one end of the scarf and says to some of the people, and Ananda, who says, "Is this the way to untie the scarf? Untie the knots?" And they say no. And so he pulls on the other end, said, "Does this undo it?" And they say no. So he pulls on both ends. Well, that makes it tighter. And isn't this how we practice? I'll pull from the outside. I'll pull from the inside. I'll pull on both ends, and it just gets tighter and tighter. So the Buddha then asks Ananda, how do you untie the knot? How does this get untied? So the scarfness is revealed. And he says, well, you have to do it by going into each knot and pulling from inside here. Penetrating the knottiness to untangle the knot. And with each knot, each of the tangles, eventually you come to a place when it's released. But that's only by being intimate with the tangle. And when the last movement, like I just did, the scarf is left empty and spacious and relaxed and free. No more knotting, only the scarf. So we pull and we push and we wish and we dream and we try with efforts which use the very things which bind us into knots to tighten them. Because we're so enchanted with our perceptions, sight, sounds, thoughts, hear, all these things. And we think that through those, basically, which turn out to be attachments and aversions, our practice itself, it ties us up into spiritual knots, which become blindfolds. You can't see your way into freedom, or hear your way into liberation, or think your way into release. But you can begin to undo the knots of perception and rest in this primary awareness, which was always there, just like the scarf was always there in the knot. It's, of course, an amazingly good thing to be aware of your thoughts and feelings, to notice them, to name them, to develop this capacity for witnessing. But it's the space that's already there where we find freedom, not the noticing itself is useful, but it isn't the freedom. The analyzing might be useful, but it's not the untying. Noticing and naming use these like incredibly amazing perceptual abilities we have, but they're useful for identifying the knots and working through knotty situations and conditioning, but they don't untangle the essential knot we're talking about. They may be very helpful to soften the knots of conditioning, our stories, our neurotic fixations, even trauma over time, if skillfully used. I've taught that. Many of you have practiced those things. It's really, really useful. I'm not talking about that. I'm asking us to go further, because the freedom which the Buddha teaches and which is offered through our Zen ancestors is liberation within the knotting, resting in the space that exists whether these knots are unbound or not. And I know this kind of seems abstract, but it's not my point to try to confuse you. But I want us to keep in mind that all wholesome and transformative spiritual practices, and no matter what their source, doesn't have to be Buddhist, is going to take us beyond simply feeling better or even getting better. These lovely things do happen in shared practice, but we're not healed through wholesome and diligent practice in the ways we typically think of in this conventional psychological framework. Those things we benefit from. Healing is wonderful, and I will encourage it, and hope you encourage it and help each other. It's shared and sustained whole goodness. But we can step even further. Right alongside the necessary and loving healing, which offers us the ground of awakening and the nourishment to continue. But all this is only possible if we engage Zazen, the practice of letting go of all manipulation and trying, just sitting, and apparently looks like doing nothing, but bringing ourselves fully to this nothing in which we rest all this perceptual apparatus and take the backward step, as Dogen said. Because, there's no substitute for this practice only we can do as we sort of wake up and reclaim the nature of our own hearts, our sort of scarfness underneath it all, beyond conditioning, the scarf that's already there within the knots, where we actualize the fundamental point. We come home, we express ourselves more fully as we are and receive the world more fully just as it is. Feeling bad, I feel bad, is a perceptual description we use to describe temporary conditioning. I feel bad. Feeling good is also a perceptual description we use to describe something temporary. But neither is liberation within conditioning. It's not going from feeling bad to feeling good. That space is within the knot all along. Being caught and feeling bad means you're a caught Buddha that feels bad. Being free and feeling good means you're a free Buddha feeling good. I know I'm messing with your heads today and going back and forth. What does this mean in our meditation practice, our Zazen? A student asked Joshu, major teacher, what is meditation? Joshu said, it's not meditation. Student said, well, what do you mean it's not meditation? He said, it's alive. I would say it's aliveness, it's life. And the Tao Te Ching, it says, a pot is made from clay. The center is empty. That way the vessel can be used. It's the emptiness that makes it function. This is what I'm trying to speak to in these crazy ways. And when our practice is the space of aliveness, moving freely, rather than just a personal instrumental activity to get us something new or better, then we shift our attitude from, what good is the path to me? What good is this path to me? Becomes, how can I be a vessel of the way? How do we untangle the tangle? You remember the thing I started with? Inner tangle and the outer tangle, this generation. In the Visuddhimagga, what came before it, it said, I'm going to change the pronouns here to be general. A wise person, established in virtue, develops consciousness and understanding. Then a student, ardent and sagacious, succeeds in untangling the tangle. A wise person, established in virtue, develops consciousness and understanding. Then such a student, ardent and sagacious, old-fashioned words there, succeeds in untangling the tangle. And I'm just going to briefly, line by line, when a wise person established in virtue, the Buddha is saying, this is how you untangle the tangle. When a wise person established in virtue, that's practicing with the precepts. This brings it down to our everyday practice. We practice with the precepts. Second line, develops consciousness and understanding. This is our self-study and mindfulness. in order to step beyond constantly self-referencing ourselves. Third line, then as a student, ardent and sagacious, meaning then as a student, we enact diligent, wise care, appamada, living by vow. Then he or she succeeds in untangling the tangle. This is life as it is. Everything belongs. Wakefulness is our birthright, so it's always and already happening. And it can be realized using the very things that we now feel are binding us. Who am I without you? Aliveness as relationship. What does the world need now? Aliveness as love and care. What did Martin Luther King and others dream? Aliveness as inclusion and justice. And how do we untie the knots? Intimacy. It's aliveness. So I know that's a long and maybe more complicated thing, but I'm trying to do my job as a Zen teacher here, and speak about some of the things at the heart of all of the relationality, which is so crucial to the way that we are with each other. But I'm sure it might bring some questions, which I would be happy to engage you. We'll see what we can do with the knots.
Hi, Flint.
Hello.
So that spoke to me. I've been having a kind of, I think it's a quiet kind of protest at sitting. So I haven't been sitting. But it was really intriguing listening to you. I think early on when you said something about the ground we fall on is the ground we get up from. I think you said something like that.
Yeah, we fall on the ground, but then use the ground to get up.
Yeah. And so I was with the kind of the quality of something of the protest. It's like there's this energy in it and this frown, and it's kind of like it's pissed off.
Yes.
And it's and then I was with like, well, does that feel that different to how I kind of get quite determined and focused for practice as well? Yeah, so I haven't managed to like sit with the protest.
That's one whole purpose, of course.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking, oh, what would it be like to sit with this quality and like look at a picture of, what came to mind was that photo of Suzuki Roshi on the front of his book, or a picture of you or Josh looking back at me, and just kind of be in it. But it's, yeah, I think I need to do that.
Well, and also I have a suggestion you might try. Sit literally in front of a mirror.
Yeah.
And experiment. Show your protest face. Soften the protest face. Play around.
Yeah.
Don't get stuck anywhere. Don't worry about, don't pull on the knots and make them tighter. Play around. And don't sit for a while and see what that's like.
Well, I've done that for about a month.
Okay. And so now there's some other energy. Look at that face. Seem like a little meh.
Yeah, that doesn't really go anywhere much.
But you can sit next to the protest. As if you were sitting next to her on the cushion next to you in the zendo. But you sit with that part.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good just to it's great. It's great to say it, to name it.
Without hugging, just sit.
Yeah, because it feels really core
Yeah.
now, you know?
Mhm.
It's like there's a familiarity to it.
Right. In the midst of that knot of protest is freedom.
Mm, yeah, I do trust that.
Yeah. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing this. It's very, very practical, very everyday. It's good.
We have Suzanne next.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hello, Flint. So good to see you today. And you did mess with my mind, and that's perfectly fine with me.
My job, actually.
Yeah, my mind seems so much more amenable to be messed with these days. But I noticed that I was tagging on that very early quote you gave from Roshi, is that correct?
The
About
one about
why do you want to sit with Zazen? It's completely useless.
Kodo Sawaki, yeah.
Okay. Well, this morning I listened to a segment of a commencement address that Bodhisattva jazz musician John Batiste gave this past year, and he talked about he encouraged the students or the graduates to meditate and to pray every day.
Mhm.
You know, this is not typical commencement speech stuff. He had
By
told
a
us
jazz musician.
by a jazz musician. Um, and then he said, here, I want you to do two things. Well, one thing, take out a piece of paper and write down everything you love. And he listed some of the things he loves as an example. And then he talked a bit more. And then he said, now I want you to write down another list. And that is of the people that you love and the people you care about. And then he said, put the two together. Bring everything you love to everyone you love, and then you'll have a good life.
Mhm.
And that's what that quote reminded me of.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Inside out, outside in.
outside in. Exactly. Exactly. It warmed my heart. It started my day, and you're warming my heart in the middle of my day. So thank you so much, Clint.
Well,
Thank
I know that you've had powerful experiences associated with your recent COVID experience, which is like being in a long meditation retreat where you didn't just drop your mind, it was taken from you in a way. So you got to open some of the spaces in the middle of all the knots.
Yes. Yeah. And that really made so much sense to me.
Yeah. It's a great analogy. The Buddha was pretty good at those things.
Exactly. And I think I said to you, my efforting is stopping. I
Yes.
don't I don't need to work at untying those knots anymore.
No, no.
But thank you so much.
You.
We have Chris.
Hey, Chris, good to see you.
Good to see you, Flint. I'm trying to think how to make a really complex story really simple. For
Yeah.
about, sort of like your teaching, I guess.
Yeah, I know it's a hard one to make it. It's complex, but how can I still need to offer it. So,
For about a month, I've been going through a process of letting go of a lot of the things that to me are part of my core identity, who I am. Um, it, things that things about career, things about personal activities that I do, um, and a big piece of that has been that I don't, feels like the quality of my thinking has dropped way down. you were what brought me forward to speak to you is that while you were giving your Dharma talk, I really was hardly understanding any of it, which is not what I'm accustomed to, is hearing things that are maybe way out of my ability to truly understand, but I can understand it partly and engage with it in a way that does expand my thinking. And today, not at all. The metaphor of the pot, I really like that. That I'm going to retain. It's the enclosed, it's the space that makes the pot useful. But this is very frightening. And it isn't just this today, it's that I've had about a month of this. It happened fast and hard. And I understand the psychology that's going on within that, but this is really scary. And I'm
from an everyday practical cognitive, you think you've lost some cognitive ability, at least for now.
Yeah.
So you might be a Buddha who now thinks like this.
Yeah.
But still a Buddha whose mind works like this. You can do things with your doctor, you can do things with your therapist, all of those things to help you if help is required. And I hope that you will. That's wholesome. Even as you work on those knots, your true nature, the way you're seen by God, whatever you want to call it, is still there, complete in that space in which not much thinking is going on.
I've been telling people for a long time that my practice, I trust it bone deep. And I'm not, when I say that, I mean it, but this is where it gets really tough.
Yeah, this is where it really meets the bone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I'm speaking about these things that are hard and difficult and aren't just the consoling kind of things. It's like, no, this is pushing down into the marrow. And it's not important that you understand it. It's important that you take the ride and notice what happens to your own mind, what you think is your mind as you do it. And there are things to do that are very wholesome and important, hope you'll do medically and psychologically. And for you to recognize your fullness and completeness, even in the midst of however those conditions change, then you're understanding what Buddhist practice is.
I've got some of that. I don't know I guess I won't ever have enough. But
understanding it is part of the cognitive perceptual ability that isn't your mind. It's the space between the thoughts. It's the silence between the sounds. It's the spaciousness that I'm asking you to step into.
Yeah, okay.
Use the space that you've been given right now and see what it opens for you. Not new thoughts.
Okay.
Even as hopefully some thought returns, of course.
Yeah.
Enjoy the space in the pot.
Thank you.
So I want to ask about the idea of sitting alone and sitting with people. And like pre-COVID, when we were in the Zendo and sitting side by side, I really could notice a big difference than sitting at my house.
Uh-huh.
And now I do so many more Zoom things, and I'm noticing that I'm alone in my house, but I'm also sitting with others because I can see their squares. And
you know some of those people, and you've been with them in the past.
Yeah.
I'm in your body, you're in my body, even though this is virtual in a certain way.
And even those that I've only known in their squares, I feel like I know and am connected with. But there's I still have something that is like, am I safe? Like, am I safe when I open up into this sitting space? Like, I still feel safer if I'm at home.
Hmm.
And I don't know. There's, you know,
What do
I've
you
been
mean
working
by
with the idea of like if I'm sitting completely by myself, I actually am still sitting with other people.
Yep.
So I'm trying to feel that, not know that.
What's the unsafety? Am I safe? What are you asking?
I guess it's like a little child part asking about my spiritual life as a kid and not feeling safe in a spiritual place
And
or a
how
religious
are you
place or a
not safe?
fundamentalist place.
How are you
What?
not?
How was I not safe? There was a lot of judgment.
Okay, so what you mean is like being verbally and energetically attacked.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Which has never happened with you guys, but I still think that there's something there that must think that or not think that, but feel that, because I have so much of attraction to being alone.
When you enter sacred space, your body guards against attack,
Yeah.
and you're drawn to sacred space,
Yeah.
and you're fearful of it.
Yeah.
There's the knot.
There's the knot.
When we first met, you were invited into a sacred space to watch a wedding. We told the story before, but it was weird because you came into the sacred space and there was no attack.
Right. And no hooks. There were no.
Yeah.
There was no attack. There were no hooks. There was no lead you. Yeah.
And now that's what you're offering. When you meet with other people, when you teach your classes, you're offering relationships with people. You're actually offering Dharma a lot of the time, actually.
Yeah.
Without hooks,
Yeah.
without attacking. That's the place you'll find the freedom. Not as a child looking for protection, but as a bodhisattva offering it.
And so you're saying I have, like Chris, I halfway get what you're saying.
That's pretty good. If you continue to work to try to not feel unsafe, there are psychological things you can do and have done, which will be helpful. There are experiences you can have, and you'll continue, which have been helpful. All that will happen, on the conditioned level. But when you are in front of a student, whether they have a camera in their hand or they're asking about appamada or whatever, and you can feel yourself called into that sacred space with them and your offering. So there it is, right there.
Yeah.
The question of safety is not relevant. It just doesn't come up, does it? No. Because you're no longer that little one. You're just a Dharma moving. It's alive. It's alive. It's aliveness. That's what I mean.
Okay. Thanks.
Mhm.
Thanks for all,
Yes, for everybody. So together we'll remind ourselves what the central practice is. The 4 practice principles. This is a little more down to earth now. And thank you for going on the ride with me. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering. Holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering. Holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering. Holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. There's a kata blessing to everyone, everyone, everyone. And then you would take it and then you would put it back on me, of course. So.
Thank you so much, Flint. Thank you for such a rich teaching. I'm sure it'll be unraveling in us all for quite some time.
We'll be unraveled by it.
Yeah, thank you all to everybody for being here. And if you feel moved to offer dana, then please do to Flint or for any of the events at Appamada to support and continue the offerings, then please do go to appamada.org and you'll find opportunities there. And if you'd like to continue to meet and share, then please do pop yourself into gallery view and I'll be joining you for a further 30 minutes. Thank you all so much. Maybe we can unravel some knots. Thank you.